Ferrari 599s and FFs are trading for about half of their original MSRP or even less, but there are a few key reasons as to why this might change soon. What's up YouTube and welcome to a new video. Now value wise, the FF and the 5.9 didn't receive a lot of love during the last years. They were trading at some point more than 50% under MSRP, and I know that this sounds a bit cliche, but it seems to be that the cars were a bit forgotten. Now for a car which has an Enzo-derived V12 in it and another one which has the same pedigree, that's a shame. Yet, in last year's video, I already showed you that at that point in time, the expected depreciation was extremely low for the 599 and that the major thing which affected their values was the mileage. Now recently, it really seems that the FFs and the 599s stepped out of their own shadow and received some love. Moreover, they might be the next big thing in Ferrari land, and in this video I will show you why. We will start by having a look at today's market so we know what's what. Over here we have the US 599 market with the model year on the horizontal axis and the price on the vertical axis. Each car is displayed by a bubble and the median price point for each model year is displayed by a black X. Now the first thing which you probably notice is the market size. This is extremely small. There are only 14 cars for sale and this makes a 599 quite rare these days. Now like I already pointed out in my previous analysis of the 599 market, this means that we need to be careful with all the derived numbers as the uncertainty in them is high. Second, you can also see that prices are all over the place. The most expensive car is listed for $275,000, while the cheapest example is listed for $110,000. And some of this price difference can be explained by the presence of the HGTE package. So let's identify those cars. In blue we have now the cars with the package and in orange the ones without the package. Now this so-called HGTE package upgraded the handling of the car and added around $30,000 to the original MSRP. Momentarily, however, the premium which you pay for the package is slightly higher as those cars tend to cost you $39,000 more than the ones which don't have this package. If we look then at the FF market, then we can see that this is slightly larger than the one for the 599 as there are 40 cars for sale. However, just as in the 599 market, prices are all over the place. They start at $125,000 and you can see that this is a solid bottom. Nobody is daring to price them under this amount. Now if we look then at the top end of the market, then we can see that the ones with the lowest mileage still go for $210,000. However, with $158,000, the median price doesn't deviate too much from the $162,000 for the 599. And that is even though that the FF is a much younger car. Alright, so we just had a quick look at the 599 and the FF market. But let's put those markets now in a context so we know how the prices relate to some other cars. More specifically to some other Ferraris. We are looking now at the same graph but with a lot more models in it. And it might seem a lot, but please stay with me here. We will cover it from top to bottom. All the way at the top end of the price range, between $240,000 and $435,000, we have the 599 of the modern era, the A12 Superfast. Now right below that, we find the first V8 and the second V12 in the list, the 488 and the GTC4 Lusso V12. If we then continue to go down, we find the 458 and the F12. And this is crazy, isn't it? How on earth is an F12 in the same price range as a 458? In my mind, the F12 is simply in its own league. Now moving on towards the bottom end of the graph and below $200,000, we can see that we have the 599, the FF and the youngest Californias. And also this is mind-blowing. If you are shopping for a California from model year 2016 or 2017, you can also go for an FF or 599. Yes, of course, the running cost will be completely different, but wouldn't you be tempted? I certainly would. Now if we go down even further, we can see that we have the F430s and the 360s, both of which partially overlap with the California market. Alright, let's take now a step backwards from the graph, because then we can see a few interesting things. First of all, we can see that model year has a very strong effect on the price for cars which are roughly 10 years old. Look at the price difference between a new A12 and one which is 2 years old. That's a $60,000 gap. Moreover, if you were to look deeper into the data, you would find that this goes especially for the V12s. But this is then also a well-known fact among Ferrari enthusiasts. You can see for example that the Lussos are diving under the 488s while the Lussos had a higher MSRP. And this also explains the price levels of the 599 and the FF. They simply depreciated a lot. But like I already hinted at, these cars won't depreciate forever. In fact, we might be at a market pivot for these V12s. Prices have been increasing, and that you can see perfectly with the following graph. Over here we have the value development over time for the FF in blue and for the 599 in orange. For the latter one, prices increased from $132,000 to $159,000, and this equals an increase of 20%. And this increase is statistically confirmed. And to put it simple, this means that it is unlikely that the increase is the result of chance. And this is, by the way, for the cars which don't have the HGTE package. For the cars with the package, prices went up only by 6%. But as you saw earlier, there are only a handful of cars for sale in that market, so the reliability of that price increase is pretty low. Now if we look then at the FF, then we can see a similar price increase. Prices over there went up from $130,000 to $158,000, and this equals an increase of 20%, and also this increase is statistically confirmed. But now then, look at the similarity between the price points and the price development. It almost looks like the lines belong to the same model, even though that the FF is 6 years younger. There is, however, also a crucial aspect where these cars differ: the market supply. But before we have a look at that, if you like this video, please click on the like button down below, as it really helps to support the channel. Thank you. Now then, the market characteristics and the market supply. We can see over here that supply for the 599s without the HGTE package decreased drastically. In October 2020 there were 51 cars for sale, and in today's market we only have 9 cars. And this is completely different to the situation in the FF market. Supply over there actually increased from 29 to 40 cars. And this is rather extraordinary. In most markets we can see a decrease in supply. Moreover, this increase in supply is accompanied by an increase in the prices. And this of course implies that also demand increased a lot. Now when we look at the mileage and model year development, then we can see that the markets moved in a similar way. The median mileage increased and also the median model year increased. Alright, but now you might think, dear four-wheel trader, every car in the market went up in value. So the price increases what you are presenting here are not really evidence that the FF and the 599 are at their pivot points. And you're absolutely right. By the way, on a side note, I made several videos on the current market situation and the drivers behind the price increases. So if you want to know more about that, head over to my channel. So what is then the reason that we might have seen the bottom for the 599 and FF values? Well, there are actually a few reasons. First, like we already saw in this video, the cars offer extremely good value for money at this price point. These are cars which at one point represented the pinnacle of Ferrari's engineering and are now priced as high as 2-year-old Californias. Now by itself this is of course not a reason for a market bottom, but it provides a good market context. Now second, and this goes especially for the 599, supply decreased significantly like it did for many other cars. But with only 9 non-HGTEs for sale currently, it really becomes a rare car. But also this by itself doesn't mean that we are at the bottom, but it's also something to take into consideration. Third, when you compare the price increase for the FF and the 599 to some other cars, then you will see that they sit at the very top end of the increases. Let me first show you this by comparing the price increases to some other Ferraris. Over here we have from top to bottom the price development for the 488, GTC4 Lusso V12, F12, 458, 599 and FF, California, F430 and 360. Now as you can see, this is not a like-for-like comparison, as I don't have the exact same dates for all of the models, but it gives a reasonable impression. Let's now insert the relative price increases in the graph. We can see now that it are the FF, the 599 and the 458 which increased the most. Now I have a separate video on the 458 market and the link to that video is appearing right over here. We are not going into the details now of that market. The thing which I would like to highlight over here is that the FF and the 599 sit at the very top end of the price increases, while they historically depreciated the most. And to me this signals that at that price point the market thought that the cars were discounted too much. It is then also something which, for example, you don't see in the California market. Now it would be great if we could also compare the price development of the FF and 599 to some of its direct competitors, but unfortunately I don't have much data for those cars. The DB11 V12 comes the closest. So let's have a look and also see how the price development in that market compares to the FF and 599. Over here we have again the 599, the FF, but also now the DB11 in green. And you can see that they are actually pretty similar in terms of price point. Yet, the price increase in the DB11 market was a lot lower. DB11s went up with 16%, while we are looking at 20 and 22% for the Ferraris. So also compared to the Aston, the Ferrari scored well. So I gave you now 1 to 3 reasons as to why the markets for the FF and 599 might be bottoming. But there's also a fourth one. But this one might be a bit controversial. It has to do with an increase in search popularity for the 599 on Google. Let me show you. Over here we have the search interest over time for the 599, FF and F12. And you can see that the range for the values goes from 0 to 100. And it is important that I point out that these are not absolute values. A value of 100 in the graph means that at that specific point in time, the search term was at its peak popularity. So a value of 50 means that the search term would be half as popular compared to its peak popularity. Now when we look at the development over time of the search interest for the cars, we can see that the data is noisy, very noisy. So I removed the noise and also included the trend. Now when we evaluate these trends, then we can see that the trend for the FF is still downward sloping, that it is more or less flat for the FF, and that is actually slightly upward for the 599. The search interest for the 599 has been historically, compared to its peak popularity, lower than for the other cars. But if I zoom in a bit to the last 3 years, then we can see that the trend has been upwards and that it's actually surpassed the FF. Now this looks quite promising for the 599, right? But why is this piece of evidence over here a bit controversial? Well, I actually don't have any evidence that this relationship holds. It would be very interesting to investigate this, but it would require a ton of data, something which I unfortunately don't have. So all in all, we don't know if this increase in search interest over here is by itself an indicator of a market bottom. However, it does fit in the pattern of bottoming indicators. And with that, let's wrap up and conclude. So, we saw that FFs and 599s went up in price, but that's nothing special. The whole market is up. However, what we see here might be more than an ordinary price increase. First of all, we saw that the cars offer extremely good value for money. Second, and this goes especially for the 599, supply decreased a lot and there are only a handful of cars for sale in today's market. Third, the price increase for the 599 and FF sits at the top end of the range of price increases. And finally, fourth, we could see an increase in search interest on Google for the 599. Now if we put all of these puzzle pieces together, I think that especially the case for the 599 is strong. But this is of course my own opinion based on the data which I just showed you. But what do you think? Are FF and 599 values indeed at the bottom? Or do you see things differently? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this data-driven approach of analyzing car markets, but would like to see it for a different car, comment below for which car you would like to see the analysis. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell so you will be notified when your requested analysis goes live. As always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you next week for a new video.